This is an absolute steal for the Boston Celtics as Brad Stevens goes up once again with his mastermind plans and selects a player that not a lot of people are intrigued and thought on, but looking after the draft selection, looks like it's going to be a key piece. And he just absolutely just hit a home run with this selection here, selecting Hugo Gonzalez out of Real Madrid with pick 28. So how will Hugo Gonzalez fit into Joe Mazzulla's team, and what does he look like to be for a prospect? We're going to dive and explore all of that and more on this episode of Celtics Digest. I am Bruce Velez, once again with my co-host Patrick Billings. And Pat, the draft guy, we're going to get into a lot about Hugo, but you had a fun draft day today. Lots of great picks overall, and the Celtics here get a great one in Hugo.
I mean, Bruce, a fun one might be an understatement. I mean, this draft moved absolutely crazy. I had a couple picks right to start off the night, but after that, everything was all over the place, and that's a good sign going into tomorrow as well.
100%. And we'll get into that a little bit later as well, because the Celtics obviously have pick 32, the second overall selection in tomorrow's second round of the draft. So keep an eye out for some names that maybe have fell in the first round for some filler holes for the Celtics as well. But Patrick, let's dive in and let's explore this great pickup, because I ultimately think this is amazing for the Boston Celtics, and we'll get into a little bit why I think this is such a great pick. But there were some question marks, obviously, when he was selected with some of the names being available. We've obviously talked about guys like Maxime Reynaud, guys like Ryan Kalkbrenner, Rasheer Fleming, Adu Thero, even Chaz Lanier was up on the big board, and he was someone that worked out with the Boston Celtics. But they went out there and surprised everyone, right? They went out and they went and selected Hugo Gonzalez with pick 28, as we saw from Michael A. Scotto here with this selection. And what we saw from Draft Express, Jonathan Givony, one of the main insiders here for the NBA draft and does a lot of research in the European basketball and international sites, said that the Celtics got one of the steals of the draft here. So when you hear that, what is your main takeaways from hearing this from Jonathan Givony, Patrick?
I mean, my first impressions, Bruce, I'll be brutally honest with you. I was pissed because of all the we did break down film on, but luckily going into tomorrow, a lot of those guys are still on the board, so it looks like, as for Kevin O'Connor, as we saw from Noah Dalzell, a little talk that they did, saying that the Celtics would kind of do a little bit of a shot in the dark, and then someone that they really know that they're kind of looking at, and like a Rasheer Fleming, like we talked about. So clearly they took that shot early on. And I mean, a lot of stuff that I'm hearing about Hugo is definitely a lot more relaxing. I feel a lot more better about the pick. And back to that, we just got to trust in Brad because he knows what he's doing. He's made a lot of the right moves in the past, and I think that this is one of those moves as well.
Yeah, you mentioned obviously trusting in Brad. We look back at the trades that have just happened over the couple of days. We got to put our full faith into him. And in the draft, he's done pretty solid as well. Jordan Walsh still looks as an intriguing young piece. Baylor Shireman has some potential to really grow with this team. And even though I wasn't the highest on Hugo Gonzalez when the immediate pick came really through, following getting the video set up and kind of looking into some stuff, definitely has some intrigue on him because, like you mentioned, Patrick, we didn't do much research into him. He wasn't one of the guys that we looked at as a potential draft piece, but obviously with him coming into Boston, we're going to have to do that. Obviously, like we mentioned, he played at Real Madrid, obviously a 19-year-old prospect here, but is someone that is going to be coming over to the Boston Celtics this season. And what we heard from Brad Stevens in his post presser here from the draft so far is that Hugo is a young guy, a little bit of an old soul, but he played on teams with adults for a long time, and obviously referring to Real Madrid, which we'll get into who those players are just in a little bit. But Brad Stevens also said that they've been watching him for a long time. They're a big fan of how he plays. He's tough. He's hard playing. He cuts. He goes after the ball. He competes. He's got all the intangibles of a winning basketball player. And we know the Celtics obviously like for those key intangibles to be brought out into their players. They have those guys that are the hard workers, the guys that fight for the loose balls. That is kind of the Celtic culture. So hearing that and having a guy that's going to, kind of come in here and work his tail off for the Boston Celtics is definitely a very intriguing sign as well, if Brad Stevens says they've already been watching him.
Yeah, that's definitely a good sign for me because that's something that I've highly praised from guys from the Boston Celtics, and that's something I talked about Baylor Shireman to try and get some minutes with the Boston Celtics, and it would be his hustling and his motor, and this is exactly what Hugo Gonzalez is. He's a high motor guy. He's going to hustle down the court every single time that he's on the court, and I mean, he's a very small sample size, so you can't really go off of the numbers too much on a very stacked Real Madrid team. So when you look at a lot of these guys from Europe, a lot of the guys even in the lottery, their stats, you're looking at them, you're like, why is this guy a lottery pick? It's a very small sample size, but a lot of them do translate well with the way that they play in the NBA. So you got to look at it that way. But if you're looking for a high motor guy and someone that can fill into a championship team like the Boston Celtics, I think that's something that you really want to be happy about, because we thought that Peyton Pritchard coming off the bench was that high motor guy and someone that could kind of change the way that the team is playing and kind of get them into a groove and get them a little bit hyped up. And that's exactly what they got here with Hugo Gonzalez.
Yep, and I want to make another key point that I just thought of too, Patrick, when just speaking, was that we've seen kind of these guys from Europe kind of translate over to the NBA a little bit, and some of them have had relations with the Celtics, right? Look at Gershon Yabusele, who just came back from obviously his Olympic stint going to the 76ers, and he's going to be getting a big payday here in free agency from the reports coming down. But that's someone that they've shown interest in, obviously playing overseas. You obviously look at Joe Mazzulla looking at Noah Penda, which was something that was reported before the draft, and he's still available going into tomorrow. So that's another intriguing piece the Celtics could look for. And also, Joe Mazzulla went to Turkey to watch Nigel Hayes-Davis. So they've had some, intangible scouting with European players, and that makes sense with Brad obviously speaking about that. But it just goes to show you as well that they trust in kind of this mold and kind of bringing one of these guys over to Boston and kind of bringing that game and not being fearful, or I guess fearing the uncertainty that many people might fear in bringing a European guy over. But I want to note this as well, that Steven said that Gonzalez had experience playing with NBA caliber players, like we mentioned, and a little bit of an old soul, and his former teammates that he's played with, Serge Ibaka, Mario Hezonja, Bruno Fernando, Dennis Smith Jr., and I think you mentioned someone else as well.
Yeah, Facundo Campazzo. I
Yep.
mean, if you look at his accolades, he is an absolute winner. So that's someone
hmm
else that you definitely want to learn from.
Exactly, and I think that is a very key point as well for a guy like Hugo to be coming into a Boston Celtics team, right? Already filled with those veterans, guys like Jayson Tatum, Derrick White, Jaylen Brown, Al Horford, all those guys that have been in that championship level caliber experience. A guy like Hugo has that, I guess, fitting in ability because he's already played with those veterans. He understands what it's like to be in one of those locker rooms. He knows he's not going into a room where it's just a bunch of young guys just having fun, just joking around. It's going to be serious like that. He's already used to that experience playing over with Real Madrid, playing and being in that atmosphere with guys that already have had success in the NBA. So I think that's a little bit of an intriguing sight for it as well for the Boston Celtics, bringing in a guy who I think can really fit into their locker room, their culture, and their identity as well, playing his role for the Boston Celtics.
Yeah, and I think this is also something that is stand out about Hugo as well, especially on the defensive end, especially when it comes to his size. He's standing about 6'6", just over 220 pounds. He's good on the switch on the defensive end, so that's definitely something that you like to see with the Boston Celtics, as they're able to switch on to a lot of defenders, and as well as his athleticism. He's pretty athletic, and again, another basketball IQ. He's got some pretty good ball handling. Looks like he has a little bit of a quick first step as well, but more of a driving guy on the offensive end, but he kind of lacks the shooting aspect of
hmm
things. But of course, with the Boston Celtics, I think he's surrounded by a lot of good shooters, and that could definitely change overall. And I think the one biggest thing is just getting reps and minutes, just being able to actually play in games to actually get better. I think is definitely the number one key. It sounds pretty obvious, but when you're on a stacked Real Madrid team like that, he wasn't getting a lot of minutes. So you bring him over to Boston with a bunch of these winners and just all these stars as well. I think it definitely is going to help him a lot when it comes to his development.
I agree. And with the Celtics obviously having Tatum out, doing some salary moves and potentially doing even some more salary moves, they might have those options for a guy like Hugo Gonzalez to get that opportunity with the Boston Celtics. You mentioned not the greatest shooter, but with Joe Mazzulla's offense, I think we can change that and maybe work some things in there for a guy like that to at least maybe not be the greatest three-point shooter, but at least be pretty solid working in with this Celtics team here. Now, talking a little bit away from Hugo, obviously, great pick and all. We think he is an absolute steal. There were some people that were available on this board and guys that we did like and talk about, Patrick. We mentioned Rasheer Fleming, who was there. We mentioned Ryan Kalkbrenner, Maxime Reynaud, Adu Thero, Chaz Lanier, who also worked out for the Celtics, is still available. And with the Celtics being at pick 32, that's going to be interesting to see what they prioritize as well. They still need that hole for that center, but they do have two of them available. You mentioned before we went live that the Timberwolves obviously don't need that center because they took Berenjay at pick 17. So with that option being a little bit more available for the Celtics here, what is most intriguing for that pick at pick 32 for you tomorrow?
Yeah, I think Rasheer Fleming is definitely at the top of my list still, but I mean, they did go out and get Hugo, and they said that he's going to come to Boston immediately.
Mm-hmm.
So when it comes to just the forward aspect, maybe they're off of him just a little bit, and maybe the Timberwolves end up going after him. But when it comes to the center aspect, I mean, we saw Yannick from Penn State go at the 30 pick to the Clippers, so Kalkbrenner is going to be an option. Reynaud, of course, is going to be an option as he's maybe Porzingis. So I think if they look in that direction, I mean, those are a couple good picks. I don't know if Adu Thiero is going to be that guy, but I think they really need to fill in that role at center, and I think everybody is going to agree that we need a center.
Yeah, I would agree. Obviously, without Porzingis now here, there's still uncertainties with Luke Cornett and Al Horford. Obviously, it's looking a little bit better that they can obviously come back, but the Celtics still needing to shed some salary in some aspects. So, with that being said, I think the center is the key piece. And with Kalkbrenner and Reynaud, I think since we've looked at them and been really high on them in our draft prospects here, I wouldn't be too mad if they took either or here for this pick here at 32. I think they're going to be getting a great value pick because I thought that both of those guys would have definitely been gone by pick 28 or 29 with the Celtics and potentially even the Suns being there. Obviously, the Suns fell out, but I think that was very, very interesting to see with that regard. And I think for tomorrow, there's definitely things to keep some eye on as well. Obviously, like I mentioned, still needing to shed some salary, so keep an eye on the names like Anthony Simons, Sam Hauser, maybe even some of those smaller contracts like Xavier Tillman, Namus Keita. And I do think the Celtics will be active once again tomorrow in making some moves, which will definitely be intriguing to see. So Patrick and I will definitely be back here getting you guys some videos, looking at some more draft prospects, breaking down some more stuffs. But Hugo Gonzalez, the steal for the Boston Celtics at pick 28. We'll see how he fits in, but I'm very intrigued. Patrick's very intrigued. We hope you guys are too. So let us know your thoughts down below in the comment section, how you guys feel about this pick for the Boston Celtics, what you guys think is going to happen with pick 32 tomorrow, or any other moves with the Celtics this off season. We will catch you guys in the next one. Have a great rest of your night, and go Boston Celtics. Peace out, everyone.